All right, so today we'll be quickly talking about, again, how do you build a great game? Like, what makes a game good, actually good, and what's the process behind all of those, right? So, let me start off with a quick introduction about myself. So, I'm working as the product manager gaming in the Trilitech team, and I'm trying my best to support game developers trying to build games on Tezos within their products and even overall businesses, also covering the parts of go-to-market strategies and so forth. I have a background of 6 years in gaming. I've worked in multiple hit games, including a hit game called Ground Digger, which reached over 40 million downloads. But the games I mentored in the past or worked as just different worked in different roles probably surpassed over 100 million. And again, you can double that number, and that would equal to the games I worked on and failed, right? So this was really blood and sweat and everything kind of process. Along the way, I've mentored over 42 startups as the ex-CEO of the largest game studio incubator in MENA called Game Factory, which is still active and ongoing with multiple successful startups. Throughout my career, I worked in even from esports to mobile games, um, mentoring and creating various products. Um, but mainly, I was working on mobile games. That I just want to underline that because the things that we are going to talk about today will be mainly on a mobile gaming focus, especially around casual to mid-core genres. So make sure you note that. But on top of that, I will try to touch up on PC games as well, as they have really different dynamics compared to mobile games. So the first thing that we all really need to do is reframe our minds, right? Because as a game developer, when you build a game, it usually comes out of passion. If you take a look at the profiles of game developers, or if you have any, if you just ask yourself, do I like games? Do I play games? Why am I building this game? Usually the answer is the game developer already loves playing games, and then that person had this um, crazy game idea that they loved, and they just want to build that, right? That this is usually the story, and this is usually the cause of what we call basically product blindness, where you fall in love with your game so much that it's really hard to reframe your mind and take a look at your game objectively. So this is the first thing that you do if you have an existing game or if you are going to work on a new project, a new product. The first question is always after you have your game idea, your game mechanics in mind, you have a rough idea of the game that you want to build. The first question is, who is my ideal player? What is my fundamental actions, my core mechanics of the game? For example, if you are building a Subway Surfers style game, your core mechanic is running around. If it's and dodging objects. If it's Candy Crush, your core mechanics are Mesh 3. If it's Among Us, your core mechanics are social deduction. So, with this in mind, who is my ideal player? You really need to question this and take a look around any competing games if there are any. Take a look at their user base, take a look at their communities, and try to understand why they are playing those games. Right. The second important question is, what will my players enjoy? How do I provide enjoyment in a game? Because this will be the exact reasons that will make your game fun and enjoyable. And this will be the core reason of players coming back to your game, right? So what's your cycles of action, reward, progression that will keep players coming back? For example, loops, very basic engagement loops, right? On an RPG, you loot an enemy, you get a better item. That's an enjoyment. That's a satisfaction for the player. In a chess game, you play and you win. That's the fun part. You try out different strategies. That's the fun part. These are all simple engagement loops. And in the complex loops, you have crafting, you have base building, or you have some idle mechanics in a crazy idle game. You have the skill trees. These are all complex yet engaging loops with actually quite a steep learning curve, but when it works, it really works well. The number three is what makes my game stand out. When you are comparing your game to the competitors mentioned in the first question, you really need to take a look at what makes your game stand out. What sets your game apart? Is it the art style? Is it a new mechanic on the game? Are you merging multiple mechanics in your game? Is it like a twist in your genre? Why is it different? How are you differentiating from the other games? I'm not saying that your game has to be 100 million percent unique and it should be something that players have never seen before. I don't think that's the right vision of it. But what really makes your game stand out? Why is it different? Why would they play your game instead of game A, B, C, right? A good example of this is, for example, Vampire Survivors, a great and successful indie game, versus Vampire Survivors on mobile and Survivor.io. Survivor.io is a clear twist, a more casual and easier version with shorter gameplay times compared to Vampire Survivors. It's actually the exact same game. At the same time, there's a different art style. There's a more casual, positive, kind of bright and high contrast art style. And if you take a look at the mobile market, Survivor.io is more successful than the other. But Survivor.io a unique game? I wouldn't call it completely unique, right? And it never has to be. Question 4 is what will make the players come back, right? This is also tied to the question 2. So the first rule of this, of course, the players need to enjoy your game to come back. So you need to understand their motives. By the way, speaking of motives, especially some GameFi projects on the Web3 space or like farming projects related to distributing rewards to the players, you will notice that the thing that your players enjoy and really want is just rewards. They just want to make money on your game, maybe if it's GameFi. But at the same time, this means that, okay, this is their motive. This is what will make them come back. So the question is, how do I aim longevity in my game? How do I keep supplying my gamers rewards? How do I have a sustainable game economy in this scenario, right? Or another kind of like Candy Crush like game. How do I keep people coming back? Do I roll out seasonal content? Do I always roll out new levels? Do I do it weekly? Am I gonna do some tournaments maybe, or am I gonna give out gifts to my players? For PC games, am I doing expansions? How do I aim sustainability in my game, right? So this is also a question that you need to start thinking from day one, because in case you reach success, you really want to use that momentum. And this momentum is usually, especially in successful games, is utilized in a way that it really never ends, right? First of all, we can make all the planning that we need. We can plan a game, a product life cycle, a roadmap, extremely concise that would include the next 20 years of your life, even you getting married, blah blah. But we all know that it's not going to be like you thought, right? It's never like you planned. It always changes, and it changes drastically, even more in the gaming world, especially when you are building a new game. You have to keep agile. So on the first glance, on the image on the left, you think this is what it looks like, right? This is what I need to do. Again, just like my presentation, this is what you need to do to reach success. Make sure you have engagement loops. Make sure you have a good first time user experience. I can talk all about this, but every game is so different. Every audience is so different that you always need to keep optimizing your game. You need to understand is the perfect game is a never-ending cycle. You will never have the perfect game. You will always need to optimize, because the problem with games is that players, if they really enjoy the game, you will see that they will be eating content, right? Us gamers, if you play a game, if I really like a game and I really enjoy it, I'm gonna sit down and play it for the next 8 hours without standing up. I will be only standing up to go to the toilet. That's the reality. So in this scenario, you will need to keep adding content into your game if you are targeting um, longevity in your game, especially, or things might not like work like how you thought, right? Then you will need to optimize, then you will need to iterate, then you will need to A/B test. So make sure you understand that building a game is a continuously evolving experience. A game is continuously evolving. Fortnite isn't the same as it was in its day one. Even Brawl Stars or Clash of Clans isn't the same game as it's in its day one. It changes because they have to. This is important for every product that you use in your life today. They change because they have to listen to their users. Which brings me to another topic. How do we make change? How do we understand that we are on the right path? How do we avoid making too many changes that it causes some like a fatigue team, like tiredness in your team, low motivation, right? Because being agile means being fast, and being agile means that you'll be failing fast. So how do you how do you do this in the most efficient way possible? This is where prototyping comes in. So prototype is a very rough, quick version of your game to test your idea. This is especially done in mobile, but it's also done in PC games, right? Your first prototype that you want to collect some feedback on to understand what your user audience really want should include the main um, concept of your game, the main idea of your game. It should include the core mechanics of your game. So that's what you are going to showcase as the first thing. It should be including, for example, 5 days worth of content, not extreme art polishing, not the most beautiful UI, but the game's core mechanic should be butter smooth. So if we are building a prototype for this classic Nokia Snake game, the snake shouldn't be jiggling around. The movement should be snappy. It should be fast. The movement should work perfectly. Eating food should work perfectly. That's the core mechanics of the game. And that's what you will build your game upon, right? That's the fundamental of your game. Call of Duty, let's talk about Warzone. It's a battle royale game, right? But the core mechanic of the game is just having a gun and shooting. That's it. Shooting and moving around. That should work perfectly well so you can think of other stuff. Weapon attachments, vehicles, battle royale modes, deathmatch modes, customization. But first, you need to get that core mechanic right. When you build your first prototype and you get it to the users, for mobile games, you usually do it through small budgeted ad campaigns, or for indies, you usually do it through your itch.io page, or you ask for some feedback from some Steam creators or some subreddits. You need to make sure that you are listening to them and you are validating your assumptions while you are listening. You need to take a look at what the audience exactly is enjoying. You need to ask them the right questions. You need to ensure that they are not biased. And you need to ensure that the feedback you are getting is matching your vision, matching your roadmap. If it's not by a high percentage, then there should be something wrong. Then there should be something that you gotta reconsider, right? Data, especially external data, unbiased data. Again, I'm underlining that testing the game should not be happening through your relatives or your brother or your girlfriend, whatever. They are biased, right? You need objective ideas from your game, from your target audience. Make sure you get that, make sure you understand that, and then you validate the path that we created 2 slides ago. That's it. And make sure that you iterate or fail quickly. If the game is disaster and you think it's not gonna work, the feedback is horrible, and if you don't really believe in it, right, you don't even have the hunch, kill it and move on to the next thing. This is especially important for mobile games because they Uh, they are much more competitive than the PC space, although PC space is getting competitive too. So make sure that you are iterating fast, that you are moving fast, that you are understanding fast. Moving our players. So I briefly talked about this, but I really wanted to expand on this because this is a concept that is usually misunderstood. Determining your target audience is not the easiest, especially if you don't have any direct competitors. And it can be more specific than it looks. You usually think about if you're building an RP, or let's say you're building a quick kind of side scroller game. Oh, my target audience is about 15 to 40 years of age, mainly in the US, blah blah blah. You can always get into more specifics if you take a deeper look, right? Of course, we're going to define demographics. Of course, we are going to do those age range, location, even gender, the other genres that they play, the communities that they're in. Of course, like we're going to understand the demographics, but psychographics is, in my opinion, even more important. We really need to understand their motivations and values, right? For example, let's talk about Marvel Snap. What is their main motivation of coming back to the game? What do they actually enjoy? Do these people enjoy collecting cards? Do these people enjoy playing against a player? Do these people enjoy quick and short games? If so, are they playing Hearthstone as well? What's the difference between a Hearthstone player and a Marvel Snap player? Right? These questions will help you understand the psychographics of these audiences, which will help you determine your target audience. Because your target audience, again, as you can see, is the cross point of the game, basically your target audience in your mind, competitor games, and your unique selling point. So this should be guiding the way when you are doing so. And then on number 3 and 4, we have user acquisition, first of all. You need to take a look at how your competitors are marketing their game and what are their exact strategies. You can actually easily do this. Most of people don't know about this. But for example, right now, go on your browser and search for Meta Ad Library. Log in with your Facebook Meta whatever account. And then literally you can search companies, gaming companies, or games directly. You can select locations and you can see what are they advertising on that platform right now. Exactly which campaign, exactly which words, exactly how they are targeting and how they are marketing their games. Imagine how big of a deal this is, guys, right? You can literally see your competitors' ads, which is beautiful. I love it because it helps me understand how they are successfully marketing their game. Because if they are marketing their game, they are spending money on this. This means they should be profitable. Um, in addition to Meta Ad Library, most of the popular ad platforms have their own ad libraries like X ads, TikTok ad, whatever, Google ads. Just take a look. It will really help you. And for indie games, especially targeting PC audiences, you will be seeing lots of influencer marketing and wishlist campaigns on especially organic social medias like Reddit and other game dev forums. Make sure to take a look at how they do it as well because it's a different story. Number 4 is again iteration. Test your assumption as early as possible, just like the previous slide. Make sure you get every feedback you can, whether with a GDD, a game design document, or with a prototype, and make sure you incorporate them into your game. This is extremely valuable, and I will I will just repeat it again and again throughout this session, to be honest. Right. And then strategize. This is not exactly about the product, but this comes from my experience of running my own game studio of over 60 people, producing over 15 mobile games a month. Again, these are hyper casual games and they are all prototypes, Have you failed and tested so many ideas, right? So let's embrace the reality first. If it's your first game, especially, or if it's your first startup, it's likely going to fail, right? Even if you don't think so, and you shouldn't think so, you should believe in your idea, of course, but still you need to have your plan B. Your plan B should be around your product as well. If your game fails, which parts of your code, of your in-game assets are modular? Which parts can you pivot, for example? If you are building an RPG game and you see a spike in the auto chess genre, can you pivot to that and how would you do it? So you need to make sure that you keep monitoring opportunities, you keep monitoring new games coming out, being played by multiple players, and what the big publishers are focusing on, so that you can always plan different pivot strategies if it doesn't go well with your game, which is an extremely high possibility. I'm sorry to say this might sound a bit pessimistic, but games business is a completely hit driven business. It's usually really a roulette. You never know, right? We try our best to know, but it's hard to know. You might fail. That's completely okay as long as you have a plan to fail properly. Make sure you fail properly if you're gonna fail. The second thing is create a funding plan. I want to split this into two subjects. The first one is the monetization of your game. Make sure that you are thinking of the monetization of your game before it's necessary, because compared to different products, games again have a different nature. If you were talking about, for example, big products like Facebook or YouTube, we can basically say that these products came out, they had millions of downloads, and then they didn't even monetize their platform for 5-10 years, and it might make sense to you, but in games it doesn't really work like that, especially if you are building a free to play game, which means that you don't have a monetization at the time being. You need to monetize your game, because monetization is also usually a core part of the game. It's one of the engagement loops. If you take a look at successful idle games right now, on mobile especially, like Legends of Mushroom, or like some strategy games like Rise of Kingdoms, you'll be seeing that spending money in the game really has a lot of importance, and there are indeed players that basically maybe 1% of the players, which are whales like in the Web3 industry, that are providing all the money to the developers, which are spending like crazy, because indeed that's a mechanic of the game. That's what they like, the reputation. Right? So make sure you think about that before it's necessary, because when you start thinking about it when monetization is necessary, it will be much more stressful, and you will need to risk a lot of things. And then the second topic around here is, if you are building a big game, especially, or if you are willing to grow, make sure you take a look at how publishing models work. How do you work with publishers? What are the usual business models are? And if you are going to raise a round, you need to make sure that you are planning for it, right? You need to be ready. You need to be aware of different valuations in the gaming industry. You need to have an eye on Crunchbase. You need to have a proper pitch deck of your game, and on your startup, you have a P&L projection. You have basically all the documents that you need to talk when you are talking to an investor. Make sure you plan it ahead. Make sure you plan whether it's going to be an investment, or you're going to do some crowdfunding, or you're going to do some ICO, and incorporate that into your roadmap. And then the final, but at the same time, in today's world in 2024, the most important subject, go-to-market, is the key. Whether it's on PC platform within this competition or mobile, you can have the best product in the world, you can have the best game in the world, it can be extremely fun, but if players are not seeing that, it's very likely that it will be extremely difficult to succeed. All right, So this was pretty much what I want to talk about today. I'm thinking of, depending on the feedback that you give me, making this into a series and go into more and more in detail. This was the very first part of it. I hope it was helpful for you. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. It is recorded, Sift. It is recorded. My wife is ultra critical. Sorry, I'm just reading the comments, guys. All right. I'm thinking that there isn't any questions at the time being. So we'll be sharing this recording on YouTube, I assume, as well. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you listen. And if it's helpful, please let me know so I can keep producing this, because I really want to try my best and share my expertise so that more game developers and more developers overall are successful on Tezos blockchain. All right. Thank you everyone for your time. I really enjoyed this. I hope you did too. Thank you.